Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing. It's a beautiful November day, a little chilly outside, so we're in the greenhouse. Catching up on our fuchsia standard that we started. If you go back a few shows to the spring, we started building a fuchsia standard so we can make a small fuchsia tree. So we've looked at it a couple of times through the year. We've brought it inside now, so we're going to have a look at it and talk about what to do with it at this time of the year. Now, for us, fortunately, we have a greenhouse, so we can keep it in the greenhouse. Fuchsias aren't terribly difficult to keep indoors over the winter. Best thing you can do, keep them bright, keep them cool. Because fuchsias are almost hardy for us, if you have a really cool room, they can sit there and be sort of dormant for the winter. Just a little bit of moisture. They're not going to grow very much. They're not going to need much care. Just occasional watering so they don't dry out completely. So I've got this one sitting up on here at the moment. We're going to bring it down to look at the head in a second. But I just want to talk about the stem. So this is a 1-year stem. It's only this first season, so it's still pretty thin. If you look at this other one that we have here, this is about a 2-year stem. So you can see how much thicker it is and how much sturdier they're going to get in time. So 1-year stem, it's nice and turned all woody, so it's becoming a shrub, but it's still a bit light. It would never hold the weight of the head. Even this one here might hold the weight of the head at this stage, but we're going to keep it staked for another season or so until we can get a really good sized trunk on here. So we may come back to this guy in a minute, but for the moment we're going to look at this one. So one thing you need to remember, especially when a standard plant is this young, that you might still get shoots coming off the stem. Now this looks pretty good. As I go up, I don't really see any. But where you've taken off old leaves, nipped off old stems, you might get little buds growing. And we don't want those. So when you see those, you just actually, when they're small, you can just rub them off the stem. You don't need to cut them or anything. Just give them a rub with your thumb and they'll come off the stem. Looking here at our staking, at our tying, we've used stretchy material so the plant will stretch as it grows. This will stretch out the string as it grows, but we don't want indents though where the ties are. So it's a good idea. Take a look at your ties. You can see here, hasn't impeded in the growth, but you can see marks where we've tied it. So you know what? Why not retie it in a different area? Don't make it too tight, but strong enough, tight enough that it's holding the stem to the stake. So we'll just go along and we can retie the stake. But again, it's not pinching on it, it's just holding it up to the stem. See here, there's not much play in it right now. So if we undo it, we reposition it, we make sure it's snug but not overly tight. Because we do want the tree to eventually support itself. And if we keep it staked up forever, it's never going to get that strength. So there we go. These can move. We'll continue on up to the top. But we're going to go up to the top now and look at the head. So this one grew really, really well. A lot of its growth, though, you can see is a bit lopsided. A lot of it grew out this way. It was sitting this way facing the sun with some shade behind it, so we probably should have been turning it a bit to get it to go. But what we're going to do is we're going to start fixing this And we're going to fix this, and this is easy to do with fuchsias at this time of the year. We're going to cut them back really heavy. We're going to go to just above a node, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm not going to cut too far back into the woody part of the stem, but we're going to go and we're going to look, get a great shoot here. What we want the plant to do is to branch from lower down. So we're going to cut just above a node and maybe leave, you know, 1/8 of an inch or so above. That way we're not getting into damage a node, because 2 branches are going to grow from here. And that's what we want. We want a compact, dense head. So we're going to take more of these off. Actually, we're going to take all of these off, because at this time we just want the basics of the trunk, a small head, and that is going to be how we want to keep it for the better part of the winter. In fact, because we've got a lot of growth on this side, I might actually even go a little further and take some woody pieces out, just because we don't want so much growth coming out this side. So we'll be a little more drastic. And then over on this side, where we got a good stem going, I'm just going to take a little bit off of this stem here, just the tips like that, because we want to encourage more growth out this way. We could even come over here even a little bit more and maybe take out another good hunk of stem there, and maybe we'll take out one more. There we go. So there's what we've got to do for now, and we're going to keep it at about this height now for the winter. We're going to put it in a cool spot, cool corner of the greenhouse, where it's not going to get lots of heat, but it'll be enough to keep it alive. And we're going to keep it sort of in, well, we'll try to keep it in sort of a semi-dormant state for the rest of the winter. And then come early spring, as the days start to lengthen, the greenhouse gets warmer, then we'll start to really encourage growth at the top and work on balancing out the head. So we can certainly do that. We've got a lot of growth here. We just got to encourage this, and maybe reduce this a little bit till we get a nice balanced head. This one here that has been a couple of years old now, same sort of thing. This has got a much bigger weeping head on it, but again, we want to cut it back. There's a broken piece here, so we'll get rid of that. We want to cut it back, and we can be pretty severe. Any little dead bits, any little weird crisscrossing bits, just like you were doing normal pruning. Like here's a funky one. Look at this one here. This one's gone right back on itself. So I think we'll just take it right off. We'll take back more of these. Doesn't need all these scraggly stems for the winter. We want it to get back into good shape. We don't want it any.
How old is that plant?
This one is about, I'm going to say, probably 3 years old now. Judging by the width of the trunk and things. There's another awkward one going in a funny direction. So just like we're pruning any other shrub, we want to sort of get it back into some kind of tidy shape here. Get rid of a lot of this excess stuff here. rid of some of these tall, stringy ones. We don't need that. All these little dead bits should come off. Because this is the time when you can see what you're doing and give it a good clean up. Stupid broken little bits and pieces here and there. Oh, I just broke that one. But when we get it to this stage, then it starts to look like we want it for overwinter. Even take some of this off more. It's a much tidier habit now. That's not too bad. So there we go. So that's looking better already. That's going to shape up nicely. And as it starts growing, you know, if we see an area getting too much, like there's about 5 shoots maybe here, so maybe we do need to reduce a couple of more out of the top here. Maybe just take that top back a little bit. There we go. Now we got a nice, pretty much a well-rounded head, ready to spend the winter indoors and be easy to look after. We'll double check the ties on that one as well. Some of them need to be changed. Now, what do we do with all this stuff? Well, there's no reason to let this stuff go to waste. We've got lots of cuttings here. We can start some new fuchsias right now. This is great wood to take cuttings from. It's still green, it's still fresh growth, but it's fairly firm. Perfect. This little wimpy tip we don't need. We'll just get rid of that. We'll use this as our top bud. We'll take off these 2 seed pods. We'll cut just below a node. Take those leaves off, take that pair of leaves off, and there we have a prepared cutting. We'll just keep doing that.
Your mom wants you to show the little blackberries.
Well, I was just going to show the little blackberries here because fuchsias are interesting plants in that if you don't deadhead them, you get these little blackberries. And interesting to know, they're edible. So you can.
And how do they taste?
Kind of like a mild blueberry, I guess, is probably a good way to describe it. So there we go. Again, we've got really thin, wimpy growth up here. Not going to do much for us. Let's get rid of it. We'll just prepare one more here. But we can always go all the way down this stem because we're still all in good new growth. So we could actually take from there, there. Clean up that bit. So if you've got leaves that are too big on a cutting, like this one actually is, you can do a couple of different things. You can take a whole leaf off if you wanted to, or we can just reduce the leaf size. So we can do that as well. There's a fully prepared cutting. We'll go back to this one again. Leaves off. Leaves off. And like I said, if you feel you've got too much, you've got some really big leaves, take a whole leaf off and just use that as a cutting. The less leaf area you have, the easier it is for the stem to support that leaf while it has no roots on it. So we could probably do, we've probably got about 20 cuttings here. We're not going to do them all. We'll take our little pot of moistened soilless mix and we will find something to dibble with. We will find some rooting powder. We got some here. It's almost finished, but we'll put a bit of rooting powder out there. When you're using rooting hormones, never use it directly in. Never stick your cuttings directly into the jar. If you've got any diseases or anything in there, then you're just contaminating possibly your whole rooting hormone. We take the base of the cutting, we dip it in the rooting hormone, and then we tap it off. You just want a basic dusting of hormone on the cutting, or it will work in reverse, so you don't want to do that. Cuttings, dibble them in. Never just take a cutting and jam it in. We dibble it. We put that right down so that the node where the leaves are is touching the soil. And then we've got 2 nodes underneath. We can do this again here. We're going to tap that off. Now we normally do 1 cutting per pot, but you know, to save space, there's no reason why you can't stick sort of 4 cuttings in a pot like this and then transplant them later. It'll just save you room in your propagators. So there we go. Damp, 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 tap off. Dibble the hole. Cutting in. Firmed in. And there we go. Easy peasy. We water this in well. We put it into our propagation chamber. If you don't have that, put this into a clear Ziploc bag and seal it up. And then it can sit in there until they root. You probably will not need to water them again. Put them somewhere bright, but not in direct sun. You don't want the interior of the bag to get super hot on a sunny day. So somewhere bright, but not in direct sunlight, and they'll just happily sit there until they root. Very easy. Lots more cuttings there we could deal with. But it's a very simple process, and this way you can have lots of fuchsias to plant out into baskets or pots. Once you've used that little bit of rooting hormone, if you're done and there's any left, just get rid of it. Probably shouldn't use the cap, but it's an old bottle, it's at its end, so we won't worry about that. Put it into a separate little dish or something that you can wash later. All right. We are in early November now, and what does that mean? We're moving indoors. We hit a garden center yesterday, and of course their amaryllis were all in. And if you want amaryllis blooming for Christmas, now is the time to get them potted. You want to leave yourself probably 6 to 8 weeks, leaning more towards 8 weeks probably. So we picked up a few. I'm going to finally use my Witchford pottery pot that I brought back from England a couple of years ago. Still got the tag on it. I'm afraid to take the tag off, but I can save it. There we go. So I've got this beautiful, they call it a fritillary pot because it's got fritillarias on it, but it's a beautiful shape and a great size for the amaryllis. So what I'm going to do with this first, and what you should always do with terracotta pots, is we're going to soak it. So we're just going to let that sit in the water for a minute, and we're going to look at some amaryllis. So there's lots of different kinds. My personal favorites are the smaller ones, the Cybistor hybrids. They're all great, shorter plants, smaller flowers, but usually multi-stems of bloom, so you can get a lot of flower from the Cybistors. We picked up a few. Mystica, which looks very much like the Papilio, the butterfly amaryllis, is a beautiful one. Bogota is one of the Cybistor hybrids. You can see the different flower shape and style, but I think these Cybistors are going to suit my pot really, really well. And then we've got Chico, which is a really narrow one. So I think maybe, let's put Chico in maybe. We'll put Chico into our pot here. So, as with most bulbs again these days, they come pre-packaged, but because they're single, it's easy to find and feel out a good bulb. So when you're shopping, give them a squeeze. Make sure they're firm, there's no squishy bits in them. Make sure they feel heavy. You'll know what I mean when you pick one up. They have a heavy feeling about them. When you take them out of the pot, even these side visters, even though the bulbs are smaller than typical amaryllis, there's still lots there. They're treated exactly the same. All these roots are dry. These aren't going to do anything. So you can clean off and get rid of some of those. You don't need to take them all off, doesn't matter. We are going to get, and actually you can see them starting, there are actually some new roots already starting from around the base plate here. So that's going to root out really quickly. At the top, if you peek, I can even see a little bit of growth starting to peak there. So that's a good bulb. It's a good firm bulb. Great size for the side visters. Thing about amaryllis bulbs, you get what you pay for. The bigger the bulb, you're going to have bigger flowers, you're going to have more flower stalks. So keep that in mind. If you're buying amaryllis in the kits, where they give you a little pot of soil and a bulb and everything in a nice box, those are very small bulbs typically. Not that they're not going to bloom, but you're going to get one spike of maybe 4 flowers. You might get a second spike that has 2 flowers. When you buy the individual bulbs and they're big, you're going to get 2 to 3 spikes of like 4 flowers each. So if you really want a good show, buy the biggest bulbs you can afford. So we're going to pot this guy up. Now we're just going to talk today about basic amaryllis potting. Next show we're going to talk about some different ways to do amaryllis. But today we're just going to do a basic amaryllis potting. So we've soaked our clay pot. It's not a bad idea to soak terracotta pots before you use them so the pot absorbs moisture. That way the pot's not going to draw moisture out right away from the soil mix you put in. So we're going to fill this up. Just using my regular soilless mix that we use for everything. Sort of banged in, gently firmed in. And then the amaryllis doesn't want to be buried completely like a typical bulb. Doesn't want to be buried like a typical bulb. You're going to get best results when you leave about 1/3 of the bulb exposed. So we'll just pull some soil back here a little bit. We're going to nestle that in there, firm it around, and there we go. That's it. All there is to it. Firm it in well. We're going to give the pot one more soak to rinse it off. We're going to water it in well. Water it in well. You can see bubbles coming out. That's filling the air pockets and getting rid of the air pockets that are in the soil. We'll let that soak in. We can firm it a little bit more as it soaks in. And that's it. That's all we're going to do with it now. We probably will not water this again until we see growth starting. Because what's going to happen, that watering is going to kickstart the roots to grow. But if we keep watering it before that happens, we run the risk of rotting the bulb or just rotting those new roots that are just coming out. So a good soaking, and then we leave it alone until we see growth, okay? Now I got 1/3 of my mouth. But I want to rinse off my pot. There we go. So there we go. Started. We're going to revisit that next episode and see how it's doing. And we're going to talk more about some alternate ways of using amaryllis in your Christmas and winter displays and things in your house. Different ways of potting them, different ways of using them. So tune in again for that. Do we have any questions today, Laura?
One question is, when do shaggy mane appear?
Shaggy mane, the mushrooms?
Maybe.
I have no idea.
Oh. We'll have to research that one and get back to you.
I don't know. We've tried mushrooms in those kits that you get, and it actually works really, really well. You just need to be careful because those kits are full of, stuff that might attract flies. So we found that out the hard way by keeping it in the kitchen, and we got a lot of flies in our kitchen. But we had great mushrooms too, so it was okay.
And Cheryl was just mentioning that although she can't add a picture, she has 3 big, beautiful geraniums that she got from you still on the porch. All the others have come into the house, but they're still doing well on the porch.
Well, that's great. It's been again just a fantastic autumn. I will say though, I planted a tree this week, and again, even though we had a good rain, our soil is like dust. That rain barely even penetrated into the garden. So if you have really well drained soil, please check it, keep an eye on it. You might want to water your evergreens and things one more time well before you put your hoses away. I was shocked at how dry the ground still was. Now that's partly because that's the way our soil is, but keep an eye on that as you're putting the garden to bed for the winter. Weather still says it looks like we got some great weather coming up. We got lots of planting to do outside. Hopefully we get a few more days so we can get it all caught up.
And Dan wants to know, how long from potting that up to bloom?
Minimum 6 weeks, more likely 8 weeks. That's why I say if you're looking to get amaryllis for Christmas, now is the time to get them potted. You've got about 8 weeks till Christmas, roughly. Get them done. That's your best bets. If you wait too much longer, you might not get them for Christmas, maybe New Year's.
All right, that's it.
All right, we'll wrap it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Let's Get Growing.